Welcome to Absolute Comics, guys. Scott is joining us here to talk about his personal project and whatever questions Sal and I could throw at him. It's an impromptu episode. We're doing it live over at twitch.tv/comicstorian. You may be watching it after the fact, in which case don't forget to check out the normal show on Tuesdays. But since it's such an impromptu show, we're just going to get right into it. I'm Benny. I run Comicstorian. That is Sal from Comic Pop. And that is Scott Snyder from, tons of famous comic books. So why don't we open it up with you telling about Nocturnal, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Well, first of all, thank you for having me again. I feel like I know we're friends outside of all this stuff,
right.
But it's really nice to be back here enough times that I feel like a regular guest at this point. So I look
You're
forward
always
to it,
invited.
and I appreciate it. No, it means a lot. I love talking to you guys and to everybody out there. So,
and for the record,
Nocturnal,
it was actually interesting when your agency reached out and they're trying to negotiate all the nitty gritty. And I'm like, I'll just hit them up on Twitter. We'll work out.
And I was like, yeah. Well, it was because we hired somebody to help us with publicity for this Kickstarter campaign, who's a friend of mine, but because we've never done one before. So, whenever I've promoted my own books at DC or my indie stuff, I understand, I think at least enough, the comic book calculus of promotion to be able to handle it on my own. But with Kickstarter, it's just such a different animal that I wanted somebody who had done a bunch of them before. So yes, he's really nice, but I needed a bit of help all around. So it's our first Kickstarter, and it's for this book, like you mentioned, called Nocturnal. And it imagines that tomorrow solar light, sunlight, just stops reaching the earth for reasons that nobody understands. So we're plunged into this eternal darkness. And what happens is everybody realizes pretty quickly that if you stay in the dark for more than about 48 hours, any living creature that does starts to become something called a shade, which is like a monstrous and predatory version of itself. So it's this very desperate world. The story takes place about 10 years after this has happened, after the last morning. And nobody knows the nature of the darkness, whether it's supernatural, whether it's cosmic, whether it's biblical, because darkness is the ninth plague in the Old Testament. And so it's this world of tremendous uncertainty and anxiety and danger that we wanted to make in a figurative way, like a corollary to what's happening now and what we're afraid of for our kids. That feeling of what it's really about is how human nature fares under pressure in a moment of tremendous adversity and also uncertainty and the unknown. And darkness for me, the idea of, I was very afraid of the dark as a kid. I remember going out there in the hallway of our apartment and testing myself, being I'm going to turn this flashlight off for 30 seconds, 35 seconds. And what you're afraid of when you're afraid of the dark is just that. It's the unknown. It's not a particular thing. It's the absolute inability to discern anything. And as somebody who's deals with anxiety and all that stuff, for me it's always that. I as you guys know, as my friends, I feel like I'm very eager a lot of the time for assurance on stuff where I'm look, this is right. I'm not wrong to think that this is this, or I'm not right. I feel like I've gamed it out, and this you get that I'm trying to say this. But in the dark, there's nothing, you just don't know anything. And so This world is, for us, really personal, potent, but it gives us the kind of big thriller, high octane engine to tell that kind of story I love doing. It's just propulsive, nonstop. The main character, her name is Val. When she was very young, she had very bad cataracts. She couldn't see well. She had corrective surgery a little later than normal because she was adopted. And so now she's going back to those skills she learned as a kid. And she's this badass truck driver that takes people from place to place with this truck with weaponized lights and all this. So it's this incredibly fun, big mythology world that kind of races from the moment you enter it onward. But it's also a personal story. So I love it. It's on Kickstarter. And the reason that we're doing it this way, then I'll shut up about it, is that, COVID was rough on everybody, obviously, in the industry, from creators to retailers to you guys, comic book journalists, everybody. And one of the things we realized as creators, we had the book already lined up with Image. We still do. So it's coming out in February as an ongoing series monthly. But what we realized was that to keep it going in those tough times, we had to lean on the publisher if we were going to do it continually and not get other work. If the artist wasn't going to go back and do DC, Tony wasn't going to go back and do DC Marvel stuff, we'd have to ask for some advance against the book from Image. And, they've been great to us, but what it made me feel uncomfortable with is that, we're relatively big name creators. Is that taking resources away from newcomers that could use those funds more than us? And so I went to Tony and I'm like, look, maybe this kills two birds with one stone. what we'll do is we'll be able to offer people something personal, collectible, something that the whole campaign is built around intimacy with us. You get to do classes with us. You're drawn into the book. You get Q&As. I just came off one where, like I said, Tony was like driving his car to pick up his daughter while I'm like juggling the baby. So you get a very intimate window into like our collaborative process. You're part of it. And then secondarily, from a pragmatic standpoint, what it does is it allows us to create enough money that we can safeguard the book, so that no matter what happens with COVID or any of it, we don't have to ask anyone for an investment. We can make the book no matter what and give it to you monthly. And then anything that I make personally past the funds for those first 5 issues, I'm going to put towards the next book, which we're going to announce really soon, like the next project for my own label for Best Jacket, which we announced with this. And we're going to have some of the artists that are doing books with me on Best Jacket do promos and art and lithographs for this book too. So some of which will come free with the book and some of which you can buy as add-ons. So it's one big kind of celebration of trying to take greater control of your property, of your career, of your fate, honestly, as a creator, and trying to do stuff that also proceeds responsibly. And that's important to me, So we have a retailer tier where retailers can buy a version of the book that has a different cover. 10% of the it costs, so it's very cheap, and 10% of the proceeds go to BINC, to BINC. So the book itself, and then I'll stop, is a black and white version of the first issue, unlettered. It's the art, the script, the designs. It's going to have extras now because we funded already. It'll have like a short story from me that's from the point of view of the main character Val about the first night that the sun didn't rise, all kinds of stuff. So all extra material, nothing that's like a toy or whatever. It's all meant to kind of give you more of this world and this mythos. So that's what I'm here promoting. And like primarily, I'm very proud of the series. It's something that's lived in my head a long time. And if you back the campaign, you can be part of our team. So I hope you'll do it and join up.
Nice. So it feels like you've given this spiel a bit. So you've really mastered it. It's a good like minute and a half elevator pitch. Sells the book, sells the idea, the premise. I think, yeah.
I'll be honest. Like the spiel has been to myself in the way that like none of us know what the right thing to do right now is. I mean everything from like the fate of superhero comics or DC comics to the indie world, like. For us, like for me, I really am trying to use the resources I have to try and do things in ways that I believe in going forward. So whether it's moving aside a bit at DC, I still have one big project at DC I can't reveal yet, but you'll see it at the end of Death Metal, like what it is. But it's also, it exists as something like Three Jokers or something that's more. That gives other people room to kind of come in and work in the main line. Because I've taken up a lot of oxygen there for a while, and I feel there are a lot of good emergent creators that deserve a chance. That kind of thing, all the way down to this with the Kickstarter, where we could do, like I'm starting to learn the math enough to know that if I was like, we're going to also do a hologram cover of blah, 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 or we're going to do, we're offering you a statue, like that's great. There's nothing against that, but and I totally like appreciate and respect people doing that for their own books, their own creator-owned books. There's no animosity. There's nothing bad about that. But what I'm trying to do with this campaign and what we're trying to do with the way we proceed in general with Best Jacket, and the reason it's called that is like you're putting on your big boy jacket, your best jacket. And Jacket is Jack and Emmett, my 2 sons. Quinn came along too late. My wife was like, make it Jacket with a Q, and I'm like, that is too out there. I'm not gonna be like JAQUETT. Like nobody knows what that is, so forget it.
The Google Analytics alone, forget about it. The search algorithm will not work.
Nobody would sue me. Like no one has ever called anything that.
Some random person who happened to have that name or something that is called. They'd come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm trying. I really like everything this year. I mean, 2020 has been a fucking nonstop, right?
Yeah,
just nonstop roller coaster of like highs and lows, mostly lows, but a lot of things to be really excited about, like privately, personally, with the stuff we're making and all of that. But trying to move into a phase where you can be very direct and honest with fans and make things you're proud of, and and be honest also about the idea that the reasons you're doing what you're doing as ways of kind of testing the waters for new methods of comic book production, of distribution, of all of it. Like if I make enough on the campaign, one of the hopes is that not only can I give relieve pressure in terms of paying the next artist on the next book, because I have about 6 to 7 books like in different forms of production right now for Best Jacket. But what I can do, and I'm paying, it's more just that we're doing it intermittently so that they can take DC work or this kind of work, Marvel work, and then go back to the books. Right. This allows me to pay more directly and say, like, let's just do this. Because I can't afford, I mean, I know people have the idea that like you do Batman or whatever it is and like you're just like swimming in money. And, right. I'm very grateful for how well I've done through DC, but I can't afford to pay for, artists like Tony Daniel for 3, 4, 5 issues in that way without asking him to take a big hit for his own family. So bottom line, we're trying to do things that we're proud of, both creatively and from a more practical standpoint, being responsible players within the industry.
I was wondering, because Tony Daniel's involved in this project, obviously, and he seems to be very much intimately involved. It's not just the artist. He also, I assume, is involved creatively as well, like in terms of development. Yeah. Where did Tony Daniel enter into the story for developing Nocturnal?
From the very beginning. I mean, he and I became friendly when I was freaking out about taking Batman from him back in 2010. So,
oh wow,
I was a fan of his, and he was on Detective. He was on Batman when I was on Detective doing Black Mirror, and then they asked us to switch, and he wanted to take a break from Batman and do Detective, and so we became friendly because I went to him and was like, "Oh my God, Batman! I'm so nervous. Like, what's the key?" And he was very good about sort of helping me kind of calm my nerves, and also we talked through story about the Joker and his face being cut off and all this stuff that was part of the New 52.
Yep.
And we always stayed in touch. And so he worked a bit with us on Batman Eternal. He worked with us on Batman and Robin Eternal. I mean, he worked with me a bit on some metal stuff, but we never really had a chance to do something centrally. And when I came up with this idea, I was thinking I need somebody who's has that muscularity to their art, has that dynamism and kinetic feel, and yet at the same time is also a good world builder and can do quiet moments well. And so Tony came to mind quickly. And I remember talking to James Tynan and being like, is he busy with you? I'm Batman like forever. And he was like, actually, he just told DC that he wants to work more on Creator Own. So I was like, oh, perfect. So I went to him and talked to him over a year ago. He liked the idea from go. We started making designs, and then I met up with him, and I went to C2E2 to meet up with him really in February. And we went out to breakfast and got away from the con and looked over everything, and we're like, let's do it. And knew to do it this way. We had already decided we were doing the book, but to do it this way through a Kickstarter. So he's been fantastic, and I can't say enough good things about his contributions to everything with it.
Nice. That's great.
I'm a huge fan of his work, so.
Oh, yeah. No, I love that it came from a place of like, of friendship and like this kind of like, let's go from here to there. Like, that's really cool.
I'm going to answer a couple quick questions about your campaign. Just we've had a few people come in.
Sure.
For people who are wondering, there are tiers that include the PDF version, softcover, and hardcover. I've already backed the hardcover versions myself. Though, if you're curious about those, there is what was the other question? There was a couple core actual questions I wanted to answer for you that people were asking. Will it go to store shelves? That was one. Will you get it sent out to shelves?
Like comic shops?
Yeah, like comic shops.
So to be clear, again, like retailers can order a version of the softcover at cost, so it's like half the price or cheaper.
Okay.
From a service called Cornerbox, there's a link in the campaign. So retailers are already writing us; they've already ordered it. So you'll be able to buy a version of the softcover if just what you want is the content from retailers with the suggested price of the same thing that you pay for the campaign, so they make the profit.
Okay.
But the actual book that you see on the Kickstarter with that cover and the hardcover signed, those will not be available anywhere. So whatever you subscribe, whatever you're backing as a someone who's pledging on the Kickstarter, that will not be available in stores.
Okay.
Cool.
So basically, if you guys want to get it in your store, go tell your comic book store, hit up the Kickstarter, get the order in there. And for all the questions that are related to witches and Batman and all, we're going to do that all afterwards. We're going to hit them.
Okay.
But let's do this first to get those questions out of the way. Then we'll go into those. I just mean we're getting a nice mix of both that I want to focus on the Kickstarter first, and then we'll go into all the spoiler stuff. People love it when you come on the show because they're like, okay, he's going to spoil everything.
Friday. It's Friday, too. So the office is closing. There's nobody to yell at me till Monday, so let's just do it.
They're all going to be busy tomorrow. Right? Aren't you going to be on a panel?
Fandom, right. Yeah. Everyone's gone to Fandom, right?
Yeah.
So there's no... go watch Fandom. We have a metal panel, but everyone will be busy with that, so we can really spoil stuff and go crazy.
No one will yell at you until that's all done. You figure out who spoiled what in those panels.
Exactly.
Yes. DST.
I'm counting on Matt Reeves to just spill everything and then be the bad guy.
Yes.
Or Robert Pattinson to just like come in stumbling and be like, and then this happens, and then
I
killed overshadow everything. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I have any bias to this question, but DST asked if I and Sal will be in the comic, and Sal and I were wondering how we get the 1,000. We'll be an additional 6 and 7 on the get drawn in tier.
I will work it in. You know what? I will ask Tony. We will try and draw you in to get killed in like issue 3 or 4. I promise. I'll alert you ahead of time, and then I'll show it to you.
Chat actually did ask that, but I was going to take advantage of it.
Right? Like, I had a question about Best Jacket, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
I don't mean to cut the line, but I am a co-host of the show, so why not? But is Best Jacket going to be? Because it feels like it's like the Scott Snyder production company. Like, are you? Yeah. I know you're rolling out with comics, but is there a future with Best Jacket where you're also going to maybe like branch out into like TV and games and more?
Well, it's the company that I've been using privately for a while. So like DC pays me through that company, and. Like, for example, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this yet, but like Witches has gone through another round of development and is going to television. And fantastic. Jock and I are both, they hired Jock to be art director and me to script it. So we're really excited, but all that's through Best Jacket. So it is a company that I'm doing multiple things with, but the goal with kind of going public with it and making it the umbrella under which I'm going to be doing my creator-owned work going forward, is to just sort of say to people, I'm making a bigger commitment to my own stuff, and that I want it to come out in multiple platforms, so that it's not an imprint at DC, Black Label or Image, even though I have good relationships with those places and love them both. I want to be independent. So I want to be able to say, I have 2 books lined up already that I know I will do with Image. I have a book that I know I'm going to do possibly through Panel Syndicate first, and then figure out what I want to do with Brian. I might do, there's one with Jock that's part prose that we might either do prose or this. And then we have the possibility of doing a bundle of them or a lot of them in 1 or 2 places as well if we close different investment deals. So for me, the real purpose of it is to be the most exciting writer to myself and push myself to be able to do different things with some creators who I've worked with multiple times. Like, I'm totally just spoiling everything, but like there are people like the biggest, like Francis and Francesco, and people that have books that are in production together that we haven't been able to announce, but
that's awesome.
That I can't wait to. They're all there and they exist and they're being made, and they're being paid for and all that stuff. But we've had to work incrementally before because, sometimes, for example, it was like, well, can you, here's the script. Can you work on these issues on the side? I can pay you for XYZ right now, but then our kid has surgery, so I can't. Great. Right. So, well, I'll take some DC work and then I'll do some of the book, and just inching forward on these different projects for years, and then saying, you know what, fuck it. Like, I want to be able to do it more full time. The volatility of superhero comics not only kind of, addresses the importance of that, but also I've done everything that I want to do except for the few things that I'm doing as real big, fun prestige. Look at that. It's Donnie. I got to call Donnie. I'll tell him I'm talking to you guys. Nice. We're a good friend. I love Donnie. And by the way, let me just promote his work for a second. What he's doing on Thor crossover, I read crossover early. It's fantastic. You guys have to pick it up. It's a terrific. It's so good. It's one of those ideas where I'm like, shit, I wish I had thought of that. So, King in Black also, his ideas, like, that guy is on fire. It deserves everything he gets. Like, please go follow him, go everything. So
I'm loving all of his work too. He's the one of the few people over at Marvel I'm still like, whatever you write, I'm on board.
He's fantastic. So I urge everybody to support all of his stuff. Both, he's a great person and a great writer. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, for us, like, I think it's just a moment right now where we're trying to really kind of, like you were asking, Sal, I think with Best Jacket in particular,
yeah,
I want it to be something where I can be nimble and try different things and be the most exciting creator to myself.
That's
and,
fair.
And try different mediums. So there was a lot of talk about like DC. They were like, you want to do an imprint here, Image other places as well. But I figured I'd like to do it for myself and be able to place books where they felt best, and also be an honest like co-creator with the people I'm with and say, what do you want to do? Like,
right.
So that the imprint has that maneuverability. So if Jock says to me, you know what, this book, because it has a lot of prose, maybe we do it in the book market, then maybe we do, and like all of that stuff. Like, so that's the goal. Again, I still love DC. I'm at Fandom. I'm doing my DC stuff, but I always told them, I'm like 10 years and I want to make a bigger commitment to my own stuff. And this is that year. So,
well, you're in a good position to do it because you have not only the the clout, but also the experience in your writing to be like, I can manage these projects and I can go into these different directions. So that's a good place to be. It's also not subject to what a corporation might do. Like, it's great to create an imprint, and I'm sure it would be really exciting to build something at like DC or wherever. But if like new management comes in or something like goes wrong, or if there's a bottom line that needs to be met and it's not, the imprint goes away, it's subject to too many whims. Like with you, your imprint's your imprint, it's up to you. It stays or dies based on your strength and nothing else. And that's gotta be freeing.
Exactly. And I think, right now at DC, there are a lot of things going on. It's a really tough time. We lost a lot of people, some of whom I was extremely close to, like Mark Doyle and Curry, and people that I think, really were doing fantastic work and didn't deserve to go. And then what you realize in those moments, because Black Label is one of the most profitable departments of DC Comics, there wasn't really a reason for Mark to leave. And Mark's the one that found me. I mean, Mark and Janine, who he was dating at the time, who now is his wife, like they were dating, they were on a date at a reading where I was in an anthology of literary writers making up new superheroes, and they came to that reading. I don't know if I told you this story before, but they came to that reading, and she was at Marvel, he was at DC, and they asked if anybody was serious about comics, and I was like, I have comics in my bag. I've always wanted to write comics or draw comics and write comics, and they invited me to pitch, and that's how my career started. So Mark is like family, and Janine as well. Now they're married and have kids, which we all call like the great crossovers, the Marvel DC crossovers. But so there's a lot that makes it like a terrible moment. The thing that I'm hopeful about, Marie Javins, who's been my partner for quite a long time as an editor, was promoted to, co-editor-in-chief.
Co-editor, yeah.
Yeah, and the vision that she has for the company and the things that she's been advocating for a long time are changes that I think are important. I deeply believe in one of the reasons I'm trying this Kickstarter thing, and I wanted to do Best Jacket in a way that allowed me that maneuverability, is that it's a time to try new things in comics that are confluent, that are synergistic, Digital doesn't need to be at odds with print, and I know there's I love Brian Hibbs. I love but I feel like there are ways of making things work together where one thing shows why it's special, and then it also, bolsters why the other thing is special. The print can't be a place where we just throw every comic that doesn't necessarily belong there and glut stores in ways that doesn't do them any favors, and all the selling practices and the returnability aspect, like there are things that are in the speculator market. There are all kinds of things that make it really hard for retailers right now, when I think there are better methods of creating strong product and making print special in its own right and growing print for what it is. And then that, bifurcating that so that print is here, graphic novels are here, these are mature, these are teen, and then you have something like YA that's thriving right now, and digital as a testing ground for new talent, all that kind of stuff, that are changes that I know we've been moving towards. And Jim has been somebody who's really been like visionary about that stuff, but it just hasn't materialized. So it's a moment when I'm hopeful about what we could be. And I'm scared that because of the axe that swung from AT&T and some of the people that were hit with it that we won't get a chance to try that, but I think we will, and I'm hopeful about it, and I'm here and I'm ready to be a soldier in any way they need. So yeah, I mean, but I'm like completely in the corn maze of my own answer. But what I'd say to you, Sal, going back to what you said about Best Jacket, is that the reason it feels like a moment for me, at least, that I am excited to see my friends, other creators, kind of, whether they're brand new, and people like David Pepose, who I saw did a similar kind of Kickstarter campaign to what we're doing, where he's funding a book, and he and I are friendly, and I supported it. Like, seeing the same thoughts across multiple tiers of comics, where it's like, let's try something different that might support retailers in this way, but hasn't been done in this particular fashion before. Let's think about YA, or think about manga, or think about this as something confluent, or as a feeder stream to what we're doing. I don't know. I just think it's going to take some hard changes, but I feel like we could come out of it stronger all around. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Before you take another question, Sal, let me start going through some of the ones in the chat.
Please, no. I was going to use that opportunity to just be like, all right.
Okay, I was like, I've been biting my tongue on a lot of my questions because like we got a lot of good ones here I want to ask, and Sal's just like,
let's do it.
Please jump in.
So Kirby Hat would like to know if you see a lot of high-profile writers like you, Tom Taylor, Donny Cates, all leaving the large comic companies to pursue your own characters and stories. Is that a trend you see getting larger? I guess is the best way to put that.
I've always had a foot in both, and I think people like Donnie and Tom have had too, I think there's some people that focus solely on superheroes, but the writers that I'm closest with and my friends have always sort of oscillated between those two zones. So I think right now, more than ever, it's important to see what's going on in both, because again, like, we hear all the bad news about people being fired at DC, and it is real. And like I said, it's tough and awful. But there's also a moment there where it means that maybe they're looking for some change and some sort of new, there might be new opportunities to try new things in ways that are, creatively progressive. So what I'm trying to say as the answer to that question is that I don't think people are just going to flee superheroes and go do their own stuff. I think it's more a matter of looking for ways of doing things that are targeted the right way. Donnie is very smart, and Tom is very smart about knowing his audience, attracting that audience when he does something. I mean, Deceased was the biggest, and now, Injustice, like, Tom is brilliant about understanding who's reading his books and saying, making appeals to them in the right arena and getting them in. And Donnie is the same. Donnie is, a P.T. Barnum in the best way possible. I'm the same. I learn from them sometimes. And so I think it's a matter of understanding that at this moment, people have less money, that they're more wary, and they're concerned with real world things, and making sure that what you're offering them, whether it's superhero comics or your own comics, are going to give them more than they're paying, and being honest and direct with them. That's to me the thing that a Donnie and a Tom and a James Tynan, who does a totally different model. Like, one of the things that's interesting to me about James does a newsletter. James is not the circus animal that we are on Twitter and that stuff, but he is extremely intimate and direct. And all of us are trying to find ways, in our own method of connecting with you and saying, in an honest way, for better or worse, this is what we're going for in our work. And those are the people I'm talking about. Jeff Lemire, different method, Hickman, different method, friends with John, like, all of that. Like, we're all experimenting with the same compass. The compass is, we can't just bullshit, not that we ever did, but we can't just rely on DC and Marvel or Image or that stuff to sort of promote the books, not because they do a bad job, but because everybody's in a place where it's just noise and confusion, and you have to reach out directly and make yourself vulnerable and available and say, this is what I'm really trying to do, and take it or leave it, and that's it. And so that connection is part of what I think we're all going for, whether we're doing superheroes or not. So no, people aren't like fleeing superheroes. I just think like Donnie connects with fans in a way that I really respect. They're the whole aesthetic, the whole he's Venom, the whole thing. And that's what we all need to do, is just engage, respect the fans, engage them, and say, don't be afraid of just telling them what you're really trying to do.
All right. Yeah, no.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. It really does.
I'm like on the couch just talking about my feeling. So
well, and I think just to build on that a little bit. I don't want to like take over or anything, but I will say
we're here for that. I'm the quiet one today.
People like Scott and Donnie and James and Tom and everybody, they're in a great position where they can tell, for the most part, the stories they want to tell. And they, I think, should and are taking every opportunity they can to be able to be like when you're first starting out, you don't get to do your Batman story. You get to do a Batman story or a story, and then eventually those stories build to get to do Batman. And even then, it's Batman, and still it's not your character. But because of your experience with Batman and because of your experience with other characters and within the model, you're able to then branch out and do creator-owned work because you're a creative person, like all involved. And getting to that position allows you the ability to say, I can do both. I can tell a Venom story, and I can also tell this baller story that's in my heart, that's about me, and that I can give to people just on my own terms without having to like make it couched within characters you're familiar with. And people will buy it anyway. And that's the hope, right? Like, because it's about selling creator-owned work, and it's about like bolstering your own creative freedoms, I think.
I've had a really, like, I don't know who I murdered in a past life to get the career I've had, but I came in, I've told you before, like, I mean, I paid my dues in prose, where I was working in books before this, and I have the hundreds of rejection letters and I worked all the odd jobs and all that stuff in that realm. Yeah. But when I came into comics, I was expecting to do it all over again, just like you said, and I got thrown on to detective, or offered detective, when I only had a few issues in. Yeah. And I was given tremendous creative freedom, mostly because Grant was working on Batman. So detective was a very minor book under that shadow. So it was more like, do whatever you want, make it weird, because Grant's kind of and so I lucked out. And then everything since then has been just, like you said, I've had an extremely privileged, and I like underline that word, experience in comics. And a lot of it too was coming to grips now, and maybe this is off topic, but just to be blunt, like coming to terms with the ways in which I had access to things that other people didn't. And I was somebody who had nothing to lose, in the way that I was always ready to go back to books if I was really screwed over by the corporate comics world, or just stay in indie stuff. I never cared. I told my wife when we got married, I was like, I'm never going to make a lot of money or any money, but I love what I do and I believe in it. I love teaching. Like, and I tried to carry that into DC. And when I was on Batman, there was part of me that almost felt like I wanted to get fired, because I was so imposter syndrome about taking it so early, and I didn't think I was good enough to have that book at all. And the fights that I had with Dan DiDio and Bob Harris, like the arguments and the yelling and the go tear up my fucking contract, like that, over getting the stories through to what they are, I always sat back and was like, if I didn't do that, you wouldn't have Court of Owls away. And that's not untrue. But then now I'm at a stage in my career where I'm like, it shouldn't be something where that's even in the equation. Not just that you do that, but that you can do that and then be okay if you're me, and as opposed to, I had some other creators point out to me, women and women of color, that like if I said what you said to that person, I'd be fired. And just a lot of that stuff for me, this moment in Best Jacket, it's about trying to recognize that comics is a wonderful and inclusive and growing industry where we have so many great emergent voices, all of that stuff, and publishers, but that it's also has a difficult history, and trying to be part of just trying to be better going forward. That's it.
That's fair.
So yes, like I definitely had my fights.
It's always interesting for me to hear the stories of like how you got to where you are, because through the multiple talks we've had, you've revealed quite a bit of how you got to where you are, and I always just find it interesting, the beginning to now, like how you compare yourself to your beginnings to what you get to do now and things. I've always found that interesting.
Well, I feel like when I was starting, I I was definitely like a bad boy in the way of like looking to get thrown out. And not like I was never, this is just to be clear. I have never to this day kept an artist waiting. I have never been late with a script. I have never in my life, yelled down or at somebody like, there was a junior editor, that kind of thing ever. My bad behavior was yelling up at people who like I felt were being unfair with me or with my team to a degree that was wrong, like yelling in a way that was insulting and wrong and that stuff. So it was provocative, and it was very much like, oh yeah, well, I don't care if you do fire me kind of stuff and that. And it was about 3 or 4 years in where I finally stopped. I think I told you the story, but it was like when Tom Brevoort called me and was like, you need to stop.
Right.
now I think, the idea, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that the idea isn't to just be good enough, like good by not doing those bad things, but trying to like what my dream for Best Jacket, and I know this is down the line, like second year at best, is to be able to help other people publish books through it, and one of the practices that we're trying to do with it is like making enough with the Kickstarter that I'm not only able to, pay the next artist consistently, which I'm able to do now because of using some of the option money from Undiscovered Country and that stuff, but to do it in a way where I don't have to do that against the book. So for example, and not to get like too inside baseball, but whenever you give an advance or a publisher gives an advance to a writer or an artist, they recoup that advance from the royalties of the book before they start paying royalties to you. As the person running the book, my hope is to be able to pay the artist the page rate and not recoup that from the advance, so that it's just extra. When we get royalties, we just split them. So little things like that sound really boring, but actually I think make a big difference in terms of the ways that we can work together going forward. So just that, like trying to be better. So hit me with my spoilery death metal questions.
Okay, I mean, I could go to those. I had I have one last interesting
poetic
one.
on like ethics or comics or whatever, and forever.
Well, I actually wanted your opinion on this one myself, so I do want to ask one last industry question. Then we're going to go on to. So, chat, this is your chance to re-ask all those death metal questions, because I see the one from our creator want to ask, but this is your chance to get them all out there. But do you see the market heading in a manga type direction where the stories are picked up writer to writer? I wanted to actually get your opinion on that one.
You mean like the stories are picked up writer to writer? How, like just in regular form comics? Just
like with manga, it's more like the like. I'm trying to think of the best, because I read a lot of manga, but I don't know the industry as well as a lot of the people in my chat obviously do. But traditionally, it's like, I guess like a great example is like My Hero Academia, which I believe you have read, but it's like one person
like
writing the whole story through. They don't ever swap it off. No one else normally takes over. Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super has only ever been written by Akira Toriyama unless he approves his follow-up. Do you see comics moving in that type of a direction where like this is the Batman guy forever?
No, I see the opposite, which is frustrating. I think superhero comics. I think we're at a real weird crossroads where I think corporations that own the characters as brands, Disney and AT&T, see the brands as something really valuable and more valuable than the creators. And they are, like, thousands of times more valuable than the creators. Yeah. But I think the thing with print comics that's difficult to, or comics, like comic books, that's difficult to separate is that we've always been a creator-owned or creator-driven industry, from Jack Kirby to Steve Ditko to Walt Simonson to now. Like, you follow the book the way you follow the character the way you follow a sports team, right? Like, so you might like the Lakers or the Rangers or anybody, but the years that they have great players are the years that you connect and you see what they're capable of, and that it's an important marriage. It doesn't mean that the team isn't bigger than the players. The team is always bigger. The brand is always bigger. But I think that it's a difficult moment in that corporations are kind of wrestling with the value of the brand, making sure it's divested from any one creator in a way that allows it to be flexible and mobile, and yet wanting to also take the best stories or get the best stories. And I think what I'm seeing, at least in terms of your question, is the opposite in superhero comics, where I don't think you're going to get long runs by one person or visionary kinds of things like that quite as much. It doesn't mean they won't happen. But I don't think that's the direction things are going. I think it's probably the more of the direction where you're going to get, more of a buildup of shorter stories or of safer kinds of things. I do think, though, that the moment is exciting because what fans are demanding, because they have this tremendous agency about picking what they want and finding what they want, whether, like you're saying, Benny, like finding things through manga, finding, my younger kid is Amulet, Bone. My older kid is, Death Note, Naruto, Boruto, everything. That finding things on your own, I think, allows you to become a more sort of picky and individuated consumer that just surrounds yourself with things you like. And what you're excited about are finding things that have a vision and are sincere and are character. Like, that's manga. The reason, like you were saying, it's written and drawn half the time by one person, or written by one person. That's the attraction. It's a single vision. Attack on Titan, or My Hero Academia, or Akira, all the way back. Like, all of it is like, and that sense of individuated vision that's there when it comes to what my kid follows musically. All of it. Like, all of it right now says we want something authentic. We want something yours. We want something that's real and vulnerable and sincere. That I don't know that like superhero comics are leading into that, but I do know that indie comics are like leading out into that, and have always been that, and are expanding in terms of their distribution and the ways in which you can get them and the ways creators are thinking about them. So I'm excited about this moment for that, for both. My hope is that superhero comics embrace that. I worry that it's going to be maybe less, but I also feel that there's going to be a boom in indie comics for that reason. And also because of the streaming wars. I mean, all you have to do is like think about like every platform wants to like grab IP and make shows out of it, right? Yeah. So they're desperate for indie comics because it's sequential already, it's visual, it's easy to translate.
And it's built an audience.
Yeah. It's a tested brand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't have to field test it. We have the metrics. So, yeah.
All right, so first death metal question, because we would go to a while. I don't want to keep you too long here. Actually, so this was one of those tough ones, but I didn't even catch these myself, but we're getting questions about continuity errors. Hal Jordan in Justice League at issue 1, Anti-Life Gun from Final Crisis in issue 3. Were these intentional or honest mistakes?
The Hal Jordan one, I don't know. The death metal, the gun one was my bad. I said it wrong. It was my fault. Actually, I was alerted to it by James Tynan and the editor, and I knew it. And I was like, oh, right, of course. I just reversed it. And I forgot to make the edit. It will be changed in the trade. It's my fault. So full disclosure, it's just my screw up. What's the Hal Jordan one? I'm not quite as sure.
Yeah, I didn't catch either of these myself, although I don't normally catch continuity errors. I'm the kind of guy that just gets absorbed into the story. But he says Hal Jordan with the Justice League at issue 1. My assumption is Hal Jordan's technically not with the Justice League right now.
No. Issue 1, it's a flashback to show you Wonder Woman is remembering the moment in Rebirth and that energy. So it's a Rebirth reference, not a current. So it's meant to reference the cover, the images that sort of represent the Rebirth initiative.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. Is Superboy Prime in Death Metal the original or a dark multiverse version?
He's the original. That's a total spoiler because you don't learn that till issue 4, which doesn't come out till September. But yes, it's the original. Basically, is he
going to be the actual scary one, or is he going to be the I'm a troll in my basement during I think it was Blackest Night?
He's the scary one. But what to me, Superboy Prime is actually plays a really big part in the series. He's the character I feel like that doesn't want things to progress past his favorite moment, in the DCU. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to me, we all feel that way. And I think a lot of us feel things were better or could be better if this. And there's always that kind of nostalgia and also forward-looking sort of longing. And he's a powerful character for that. So he's there till the end. He's got a big moment, big thing, big surprise about, not only his role, but who else comes in to help with him and stuff. So you'll see.
Okay.
Exciting stuff.
I'm excited. Okay, so yes, there's a good one right there. This isn't Death Metal related, but it is about your Batman run. Did you have a reason to change Duke from Lark to Signal?
Yeah. God, how to get into this one? Duke, there was just there were a lot of changing plans when I was on Batman, given a lot of corporate, fluctuations. And there were plans at one point to have a new Robin when Damian was gone. And then there was the plan that Damian had enough traction that they wanted to bring Damian back. And all of that was like, great, whatever you want. I'm just following. I was still new. So it was very much like, follow whatever you want to do, and just following those leads. But what was very important to me about Duke was the idea that he was always going to be a hero that functioned by day, and he was going to be almost like a character who sees things differently than Bruce, and sees things Bruce doesn't because of his background and all of that. And so it was important to hold on to that and keep building him no matter what his name was. And he does play a part in Death Metal. He actually narrates, I'm totally giving stuff away, but he narrates the back of there's a backstory, and we're doing a Robin King special, and he's going to be the back of that. And then I'm working on something right now with him, with another writer that I'm really excited about. So my hope is to do that character justice when there was just a lot of changes, not bad changes, but just things that kind of just shifted beneath our feet as we went. So I hope he finds the traction he deserves, because a hero by day who has his own little bat base and covers Gotham in the sunlight and has the boy detective powers, to me, is something that kids especially could relate to really well.
Yeah. I see your question, Imaginary Access. I want to end with that one, so you don't have to worry about that. But
I know. Can I just say I know Imaginary Access and Eris, who runs it. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, Eris runs Variant Comics.
Variant Comics.
Yeah. Imaginary Access is Tyler.
My bad. Imaginary. Yeah. But Imaginary Access. The person who runs Imaginary Access also was in my meet and greet not long ago. So yes, okay. I got the names confused, but I know Imaginary Access also.
Well, then I'll ask his question right now then. He wants to know your opinion of the overall message of The Killing Joke. Alan Moore seems to suggest that the only way... that's why I was going to be last.
Yeah.
Alan Moore seems to suggest that the only way Batman and Joker's relationship can end is if one of them inevitably kills the other. Do you agree with his conclusion?
I thought about this a long time ago when it was sort of in the air and Grant had made that comment. And I love Grant, and Grant I just spoke to him a couple months ago about Death Metal, and we're there's nobody I respect more, but I disagree with that interpretation. I feel that the purpose of that scene is that it's a moment that bridges the gap between them. Therefore, the kind of water growing on the ground between them, the reflections, that a joke is ephemeral. It's like it's a bridge between two people. It's the flashlight shined across the darkness. Yep. And for a moment, they see eye to eye and they relate to each other, and then they're going to go back to their eternal relationship of fighting. So I don't think that Batman killed him. I think it's more a matter of saying, we're going to laugh together right now, and then tomorrow we're going to be enemies again. And this eventually will end with one of us killing the other, but nobody's ever going to get there. Like we're all going to always see maybe somebody will do that story. I mean, we did it with Batman Who Laughs, but in real continuity, it will be a perpetual relationship of the devil on the shoulder.
Yeah. I feel like that's how you kind of portrayed it at the end of the Dionysium portion, where they had the heart with the trail. Like that was your version of stating, you feel like they always have to be together. They always are gonna go back and forth.
I think Joker. It's like the deck of cards. In my Joker story in Batman, in black and white. Was it black and white, or was the Joker? I have all these different things coming.
You have the Joker 80th anniversary book. I don't know if
I know, and I did one for the Detective 1027.
Oh yeah.
So I'm forgetting what I did for what, because they're all shorts, but. The Joker one, I believe, I like the idea that he is the Joker card, which is a mutable card that sort of can take on any value to win. And what he thinks in his mind is that I'll become anything that I need to be to show Batman his weakness, so he can either defeat me and be stronger, or I'll kill him and he wasn't worthy of me as an adversary.
Right.
And that relationship that Batman always unless Batman goes down in flames, Batman will never kill the Joker, but he'll always be locked in this battle of like Joker pointing out his weaknesses and Joker saying, that's why I'm the right hands of the king. I'm the jester, the way the jester used to bring the bad news to the king in the old court, all that stuff. So I love that relationship dearly, but no, I don't think Batman killed him at the end of The Killing Joke. I mean, but for all I know, Alan Moore tomorrow will be like, yeah, he killed him. Whatever. I don't know.
I have a feeling Alan's not going to be weighing in anytime soon. But
I know, right, fair enough. But that's my interpretation is not that.
Can I just say, just as a nerd, just as a nerdy moment, just if we're going to talk about The Killing Joke really quick, favorite moment of The Killing Joke? I'd like to hear everyone's opinion about that.
You just want to throw that in there?
What's your favorite Killing Joke moment? There's so many singular moments in that.
I just like the ending. The ending. I like the end. Yeah. It's Friday. You can tell my brain's like, this is your normal day off. I like the ambiguity. I like how just you can't figure out the ending to The Killing Joke, like a Porky Pig moment.
The ambiguity, if you will. Yeah.
That right there. I like that the most because of the conversations that come out of it. That's what I like about it. Yeah.
I was maybe 11. My favorite. It's not even. The weirdest part is I never took it as ambiguous. I always took it as they're sharing a moment. I thought that was the like. Okay, not to get too like academic again, but if you look at the beginning of The Killing Joke, the two of them sit at a table with the light bridging the distance between them in a triangular cone, right? Oh my god! The light, seriously.
It's the flashlight. I didn't think. Okay.
It brackets.
You have it right there.
Like they're sitting at a table, even though it's the fake Joker.
Yeah.
At a table in Arkham, and the light above them shines a cone of light, and they're both inside of it, right?
Right.
The idea at the end, the light between their feet, and all of that, to me, and the joke that the Joker tells about the idea of two criminals trying to get across a imbridgeable, like two rooftops, as they're escaping jail, and one of them says to the other, I'll shine the flashlight across the distance and you walk across it. And then the second criminal's like, what do you think, I'm crazy? The second I get halfway across, you'll turn it off.
Yeah.
Where obviously the joke is that you can't walk on the flashlight in the beginning.
Exactly.
In the first place, the whole point of that joke is that the distance between them is physical and material, but they don't see it that way. One of them thinks that the other one will betray him.
Right.
The whole book to me is designed around that idea of this moment where they're walking together across that bridge of light to see each other, but they don't. The light goes off halfway through. There's no way for them to stand on that bridge because it's not real.
Right.
But for a brief moment, if they both believe in it, it can exist enough to at least be a joke. And that's it.
Oh, one of my favorite moments is right after that when Batman offers to rehabilitate Joker, and for that one Brian Boland panel where he is back to being the man before the Joker, he's not smiling and he he touches his temple.
He says it's too late for that.
It's too late for that. It's like the one moment that he breaks and he stops being Joker, and he's kind of like, and the interpretation, of course, of that is like, is he like, oh my god, you're as crazy as I am, you think you can rehabilitate me, you're dressed like a bat, like what? There's so many levels to that one panel, and that panel, it just gets me so many times. I'm like, because it's just that one moment I think where it cracks the veneer and Joker's like, okay, let's pretend like we're not dressed like a bat or a clown right now and just stop. And it's like,
I love it. No, I mean, and what I love is that I love that book totally contradicts what we take a completely different approach to Joker.
Completely different.
And I love it for its variety. The same way, reading Dark Knight Returns, when you read the first page of that book, for example, the things that work on you as a kid and you don't realize why they work on you, and then you go back to them and you're like, all of it was planned and designed, and just even if it was subliminal, which I don't think it was with Alan Moore or
Miller.
Yeah, it's there, the architecture of it, so that when you read the first page of Dark Knight Returns and you get the very first lines, right, which are something that are halfway through the race or at the end of the race, the reading stopped making sense, so I switched to manual.
Yes.
That line is the whole book.
Yep.
It's his whole life. It's a summary of the entire story. And then at the end of that page, he talks about how, he's taken the controls and the thing's spinning out of control, and he's staring straight into the sun, and the needles of the fire are going into him, and that would be a good way to die. I mean, the sun is Superman, that's what's going to happen in the book. He's the solar child, and maybe that's me overthinking it, but what I'd say to you is the reason that those things are exciting, or the reasons they work on you, are because they're so singular in their vision, whether you like the vision or you don't, and it's totally valid one way or another, that they have almost like a hypnotic quality to them, where I think you get to the end and you're like, that was great. And you go back, you look at them again and again, you see the math and the calculus of how they built the thing. The clockwork is there beneath the surface. That's why, like, the cone of light, the whole thing, like, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know, like that, you know? So yeah.
Although I will say, just since we're going to massage the host a little bit, there is one of my favorite Joker moments in comics is when Joker comes out from underneath Gordon's bed. Is the moment in which Gordon cries from joy, from having, like, known in his heart he's killed him, and he's like, it's over. It's just that I've never seen that captured in Jim or really in comics, and we're talking about Joker. I'm like, you know what, that I will say that moment is baller.
Thanks. Well, talking about, I really do hope that new creators get to do the kind of thing that we got to do. Going back to your comment earlier, Benny, about, you know, or the question from the viewer about, like, whether people get a chance to do those kinds of, like, long arcs. I mean, or long narratives, long runs on characters. Because for us, like, when we planned Death of the Family, I knew that I wanted to do a follow-up that was, you know, tragedy. If this was like the comedy where he's literally wearing the comedy mask, then there'd be like a follow-up where he's saying to everybody, nothing matters, everything is dark. Wait till you see, I'm eternal. Like, I'll be here after you're gone. I'm everything you're not. Yeah. And the fact that DC let us do it makes me, you know, go to bed being like, whether or not you like them or I screwed it up at some point, I got to do it, and I got to say what I wanted to say. And I do think that there's so many young, exciting voices out there right now from really interesting places in comics that, I don't know. I hope there's an embrace of those creators coming up so that we really do get, you know, a full-blooded kind of takes on the characters that speak to this moment in exciting ways, you know, that are true to form and true to core, and embrace the legacy of these characters and don't break them or bend them too crazily, but at the same time speak through them to things that are important right now for people that are young and, you know, have urgent things to say. So that's my hope.
Yeah. I mean, I personally like the really long form, because I feel like if you had I loved your work with the New 52, but if you had just done one or two arcs, it would have been like, these are great, and then we kind of would have moved on. But I feel like you going through the entire New 52 run, that was Scott Snyder's Batman, Tom King's 100-issue run. We're there for the ups, we're there for the downs. We all get to experience it together, and that's what I like about those super long form runs, because it gives us more to talk about. People to this day talk about your run. And I feel like part of that's because you did it for so long. So you had so many things to say and so many things to let happen that we can all look back to. And that's what I like about those long runs myself. I've always been a fan of that.
You grow with it. I feel like there's a 5-year window in comics is what I you know, not just comics, with everything. Like, I've watched it with my own kids growing up, where they love something. They love Adventure Time for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years at most, and then they're over it, you know? Yeah. Or they, you know, their formative periods of your life last for 5, 6 years. So you'll follow, at the end of that period, I feel like you're ready to move to something else, you know, even when it drags to 7 or 8 years. Sometimes it lasts that long and it's great. But, you know, there's just a window, because human life, like, you just progress out of that phase. Like, you get married, you have kids, or you're a teenager, now you're not, you know, you're at college, you're not home anymore. And so you have a moment, you know, and for us with that moment on Batman, it was very much understanding that there was going to be an end. And I always thought it would be somewhere around 5 or 6 years at most. Like, I never thought we'd get that long. But trying to do everything you could, you say everything you wanted to say, do every crazy thing in that period. And, you know, that's, I mean, it's very interesting to see James now, you know, he was my student when I was in my 20s and breaking into comics, and he was in college. You know, he was 20 and I was like, what, I don't know, 28, 29, whatever it was. And the way he approaches Batman is so personal and similar to me in terms of what he writes about, but the way he also approaches it is different in the way that it's more modular. It's more like story, if I get kicked off, I get kicked off. Story, get kicked off. And that was the way I started. And then I flipped to like, let's do a whole run. And there's a lot more. It's just a different moment. And I feel like everybody's hopeful that they get to keep going. But, you know, I don't know. They're just different. It's like weather patterns, man. There's just different forces at work than we're in control of. Like I said earlier about Mark, like, you know, there are things with Disney and Marvel and AT&T and DC that are just so far out of our control and so far above our pay grade that the best that you can hope for right now is that the people they bring in or the people they have there recognize that there's so much potential in comics to be not only strong as they are, but even better, and print comics better, retailers, you know, all of us could do. We've been coasting a long time. We need to make some changes that I think will make us a much stronger industry all around.
Okay, I got two last questions for you, so we can get you. That way, you have time to get to your next thing. The first one was, what could you spoil for Speed Metal?
Oh, it's awesome. What I'll spoil is like every Flash in history is in it, and an army of black racers, and Josh Williamson kills it. Eddie Barrows is awesome, and it's just like, I mean, not Eddie Barrows. How am I blanking? Porter.
Howard Porter?
Howard Porter, of course, right.
Well, I mean, you guys have supported the whole show. I've been the one that's blanking out all show, so you're fine. That's why you're
no. And Wally's solution to what they need to do to save themselves from being caught by the Darkest Night, by the Batman Who Laughs, is great. It was Josh's idea, and I was like, do it, and then we'll pick it up in Death Metal. So it's huge fun. Speed Metal is awesome. And so Trinity Crisis, by the way, which comes out soon, also meets me and Francis Manipul solo. Francis is a friend. He's part of Best Jacket. And it's a 38-page thing where it's all about going back to the original, the big three crises, and finding out what happened to them. And it's pretty much like if I just did a key chapter of Metal and was like, if you don't read it, chapter 4 actually has a big recap from issue 4 has a big recap from Sergeant Rock that's like, where you been? And he like goes into it from the battlefield where he's now just like a head and a helmet. So it is actually, it's a really important, it's an important part. If you skip it, you can get the recap in the next issue, which DC doesn't normally do. But I would like, it's important. The same way Speed Metal is important, Multiverse's End is important. It shows you what's happening with Perpetua and the multiverse, and how it's all dying, and it's the Green Lantern saving what they can of the multiverse and bringing people back like Lois and everybody that's on these antennas back to Earth for the final battle in issue 5 and 6 and 7.
Okay, I'm going to grab this question because we were asking it yesterday on our D&D game, so I doubt you watch our D&D game. But on our show on Thursdays, we do a Dungeons & Dragons game where my brother and our producer play as Booster Gold and Blue Beetle in DC Metal. So they're in they're trying to fight the Dark Knights. But a question came up yesterday that none of us could answer. Whatever happened to the Grim Knight? Is he just arrested in a jail cell?
He's in Trinity Crisis. No, he's in Trinity Crisis. He actually, I wish I could show you. He's in the first pages. He's there guarding Castle Bat, and he's awesome. He set up all these tripwires and stuff. And he's there at the end, at the finale of Death Metal, which is essentially like the craziest thing I've ever tried. But it's the most sincere also. It really is like, it's all the heroes realizing, because Wonder Woman's plan, and I'm spoiling way too much, but Wonder Woman's plan right now is to use the crisis energy to kind of erase this chapter in history because it's so dark and say, we're going to forget this happened and we're going to start over. And what she realizes in issue 5, so spoiler till December, or whatever it is, November, is that that's what a villain does. Even when they're sympathetic, like what you have to do is own the mistakes and connect to everything, every memory, every history, every version of yourself you've been, every iteration of you from the very first ones. Like, so you see original Wonder Woman drawn as original Wonder Woman to now and say, that's all me. And going forward, I have to accept that everything I've been speaks to this moment, and whoever I am on the other side, whether it means that I don't get a chance to be Wonder Woman anymore, or I'm something different than I am, that's okay. And that's, what I'd say to readers is that, we really want them on the other side to feel like all the toys are back in place. Like, I'm not looking to take Wonder Woman and throw her out the window, or take Batman and kill him, or that stuff. So spoiler again, like double spoiler, which I know I'm not supposed to do, but it's not something that like, which I mean, I could look, I to be honest, like I could fucking game it and be like, guess what? Wonder Woman might die. I might replace Batman with, Bane, or
you'd be a great YouTuber with clickbait.
Oh yeah.
What I'm trying to say to people is that this part of my career is about the opposite of clickbait, and to try and say we're making these things not because it's a spoiler for you to know that most of the DCU, or what the DCU is on the other side, is restored and will make you happy, I think, and connective. But to say there's a reason that we're doing that, which has to do with saying it's time for great new stories. And we will have some suspenseful hooks at the end that you're like, wait, what? What's going to happen in 2021? All those kinds of things. But what we don't want to do is make you feel like we're sensationally trying to get you in the door through gimmicks of being like, guess what? Superman is now, dead, and who's going to, that, or, everybody's dead. Like, just what's the, sure, we sell a lot of comics with the death of the whole DC. Yeah, we could, but that's not what we're going for. But you will see everybody go down fighting. Like the whole DCU in this moment, this end of an era kind of feel. It's about what Death Metal is about, saying things are going to change and everything is shifting. So everyone goes down swinging, all the heroes and all the villains together against the last 52. But then at the end, what you get is something I think you'll be really happy with, and I'm happy with and proud to leave as the toy box for the next person.
See, we were taking bets that Grim Knight was just locked up in Arkham, and as they're walking through, they'd be like, "There's Joker, Poison Ivy, and an evil Batman."
But he would get out too easily. He got sucked back into the dark, and then he's like pulled back out. That's the way I see it. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, wait, where did we leave that character? But for me, it's like if you kind of give me.
We thought he was arrested. We were like, he got arrested. We think.
Well, James Jr. kind of killed him. Was the way that I tried to leave it.
Okay.
Like James, he brought his like inner psycho out to kill him. Mm-hmm. But we're bringing back the original Dark Knights. We're bringing basically at the very last fight. It's everything you've wanted to see. Like all the Dark Knights in history. It's like future vision, evil versions of the character, like what might happen to the DCU in all kinds of ways. It's like everything brought to bear. So it's like meant to be like the biggest crisis thing ever, with Superboy Prime and everyone fighting on one side against the evil possibility, the evil like last 52. So all
right, so the last question I have for you. Chat was asking this one, and I want to hear it. I don't know if you're legally allowed to say it, but you don't seem to care right now. If you could write any Marvel character, who would it be?
Oh yeah, no, I can say that.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Like, nope, he can't talk about him.
I have a lot of Marvel ideas, and I do plan on going there at some point. I think right now I'd like to take a breather and just kind of focus on my stuff. Unless Greg is just like, we have to do it, where I'd go. But I have a big story for Hulk that I want to do with Greg called Hulk Smash Everything. It's like planned all the way out but Al is doing such a fantastic job on Hulk right now. I'd need to like give it a rest before I took it. The other character that I've always wanted to do is Captain America. I have a long story about Captain America, or a big story, not long, but big, about the secret of the iceberg, all this kind of stuff. And it involves a lot of him and Wolverine and Ghost Rider teaming up. So,
okay, now I want to read that.
A lot of motorcycles and cigars and that kind of thing.
Like, I'm not normally a fan of Captain America solo stuff. I like him on the teams, but Wolverine and Ghost Rider, you'll get me on that one in a heartbeat.
Well, they've all been around a long time. And so any mystery that has to do with something, 60 years old, 70 years old, they might have witnessed or been a part of. So
yeah.
I have this belief that they all kind of, the characters that have been around a long time kind of get together to talk about cold cases and things. And so, yeah.
That'd be cool.
Three of them on motorcycles and the whole thing. So that's kind of where.
All right.
I have just a quick. This is definitely not. This is a totally superficial question. Which term do you prefer? Dr. Manbattan, Dr. Bathattan, or Dr. Batmanhattan?
I always just say Batmanhattan. But the thing also, like, to be really clear, and I know this is like super nitpicky, but We did try really hard. We're not using any Watchmen characters in the book in the way that Dr. Manhattan is not a part of, but what happened was in Doomsday Clock, Batman learned about Dr. Manhattan, and therefore in some dark part of the dark multiverse, because the dark multiverse is a reflection of what we think about, wonder, fear, hope for here.
Exactly.
Batman, the real one, did wonder, well, what if I created something that made me as powerful as him? So there you go. So that it's that Batman. So it is. I know people were worried we were using Dr. Manhattan. We're not. It's not Dr. Manhattan's body with Batman's brain in it or anything like that. But
it's got hair.
Yeah, I say Batman. He has hair. That was the
Bruce Wayne. Like
you don't even know. He was drawn bald at one point, and I was like, no. He's got hair, different physique. He's Bruce Wayne. He's Bruce Wayne. And when they did this preview where he's cut off at the panel here, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's Dr. Manhattan," I was like, "No, he has hair. Look, it's like he has beautiful dark hair."
Yeah.
So. Anyway, we do our best. Right? It is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess is where we're going to close out today's show. One last call out for your Kickstarter. 1 minute pitch. Where do they find it? So we can get, if they want to promote you want to get on your new project.
Yeah, just look up Nocturnal. It's spelled as it's a combination of the word nocturnal itself and eternal. So it's NOCTERNAL. So it's Nocturnal on Kickstarter. It's about an endless night that changes everybody into monsters. It's a lot of fun. And again, we believe in what we're trying to do with it as a campaign. So I'm taking no profit. You're not putting golden trim on my house or whatever it is. It all goes to the next artist that I'm working with at Best Jacket. So, I appreciate it and we're trying to pay it forward. So thank you. And thank you guys. This has been a blast.
Oh, it's always fun talking to you. I apologize for not being as active as normal. No, Friday's always the end of my week, and I was trying to get my brain awake, and it wasn't working. I chugged this whole thing of coffee.
I feel like you can just let me go on a Friday afternoon. I'll talk about anything forever. So. I'm easy. I'm easy.
But all right, guys, we're going to close out today's live show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know it was a bit of an impromptu, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Quite a few guys had a lot of questions. I hope you all did in general. Thank you so much for joining us today, Scott. It's always fun talking to you. You're always welcome whenever you want to be here. Seriously, you just have to let us know when you're on the show. So
Thanks, brother. No, I appreciate it. I love being on it. And thanks to everybody out there.